Can we clap now? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fusion tonight. Are you ready to worship? All right. Tonight, we welcome our kid preacher, Violet Etheridge. She'll be coming up to the famous purple couch. And Violet's going to warm that seat up for our special guest and the main event, Mark Louviere. And of course, bringing the noise and bringing the fusion funk is Covid Oswald. We won't say he's disorganized. He's just trying new stuff when the room is full of people, because we live on the edge at Fusion. Thanks, Covid. All right. Clap a couple more times now for our host, the lovely and the talented John Cooper.
Welcome to Fusion tonight. I'm your host, John Cooper. How we doing tonight? Woo! We're kicking off Fusion. We're kicking off Wednesday nights. We have a great guest tonight. Tonight is going to be a great show. I'm excited to see everybody. Did everybody have a wonderful summer? Yes. Lots of stuff happens over the summer. People take trips, lots of milestones, a lot of milestones in my life. My wife and I celebrated 5 years of marriage this summer. Yeah. Our little son Avery turned 1 this summer. And the one I'm having the hardest time with, oddly enough, is I turned 30 this summer. and like, I know there's people out in the audience, I can tell by your hair, they're saying, oh, I wish I was still 30. And I get that, but 30 is such a weird age to hit. Like, you think it shouldn't be a big deal, but it's such a weird age to hit, because the word young, that's when it starts kind of like going away. Like, you're not too young to do anything anymore, right? Like, you're not too young to get married. Oh, you're not too young to buy a house. The only thing you're too young to do is die when you're 30, which is, but you're the exact right age for everything else. Like, tragedy, far too young. Everything else, maybe you're a little late, actually, Mr. 30-year-old. It's weird. It's very weird, because I still feel like a kid. I don't act 30, right? Like, I have gray in my beard. I don't act like a 30-year-old with gray in my beard. I still feel like I'm in high school, right? I'm a little bigger than I was in high school. Like, in high school, I was this tall. I weighed 130 pounds, right? Like, I grew vertically, not horizontally. In high school, I was a twig. And probably why I didn't get into any fights. No fights in high school. I was not going to take anybody on. But now, right? I mean, I'm not bulky, but I'm a solid 170, right? Like, I could fight a high schooler now. I'm ready to go now. All right. We have a fantastic show for you guys tonight. I'm so excited. We're going to have youth up here. Violet Etheridge is going to be on the show. We get to hear from one of our youth. And I know a lot of you are here. Our main event tonight, Mark Louviere, is here tonight to talk to us. So it's going to be a fantastic night. So let's get it going, and let's kick it off with the one-man band, Mr. Covid Oswald. Covid Oswald, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we have a fantastic service for you tonight, but before we get to talk to our guests, before we get to dive into some really heavy material tonight, let's do one of my favorite things in a segment we call Open Mic Time. And if you're more familiar with a more traditional style of worship, it looks a lot like Joys and Concerns. So this is your chance to share whatever is on your heart, your mind, anything you want to lift up tonight. We record the show, but not this part, so do not feel shy. Anything that you want to lift up tonight that we can pray about together, please do so. Does anyone have anything they want to lift up tonight? Oh, that would have been the worst anniversary present ever. It's happening again. No. No. I'm too young to die at 30. It can't happen. Whoops. We're serious. I was being serious. This is my bad. But I would ask that we keep those themes in our hearts tonight, and as we, not just on this date, but every day, that we can get through anything as long as we lean on God and each other, and we not forget the power in that. So with that, if you will join me in a time of prayer. Gracious and Holy Father, we are so blessed to be gathered in this space, to be with one another, and to be with you. Lord, we gather on a date where we remember a day that shook so many of us and shook this country. We looked at evil in the face, and for a while we wondered if we could see ourselves getting on the other side of it. And Lord, it was your power, your grace, the gifts that you have given us to battle through those times that allowed us to look at something so dark, to experience something so dark, and walk through that dark valley and come out on the other side better and stronger. And Lord, as we lift up prayers about that date, and we lift up all the prayers in our lives today, the big things, the little things, the surgeries, the trying to get used to new groups, the trials at work, the tribulations of raising children, dealing with family matters and things like that, we ask that you help remind us every day that we can get through those things as long as we lean on one another and we lean on you. And we embrace that love that you have for us, and we give that to others. For spreading love and spreading joy can conquer and bring us through so much. And in that spirit, we ask that you are with us through this series as we start with Mark tonight, to hear his story, to hear what it was like for him to hit rock bottom and rise up again. We pray that we can all have the chance to rise up. And as we pray for that, we do so with the prayer that your Son, Jesus Christ, taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited. This is one of the first times we have invited one of our young youth to come up and share how they feel about this wonderful church. So please join me in giving a round of applause for Violet Etheridge. Well, welcome, Violet. All last season, you kept asking me, when can I be on Fusion? Can I be a guest on Fusion? And last week, I asked her, I said, Violet, the time has come. I would love you to be a guest on Fusion. And she goes, why? Because I want to know, from a kid's perspective, what you see in church, what church is to you. So I was wondering if you could tell me, because I know you love so many things, you're into so many things, what do you love the most about coming to church?
I like the friendly environment here. I feel safe here. I have a lot of my friends here. I just feel like this is a moment for me to actually have a break in my week.
You would think she was the one who turned 30 with a that was a really grown-up response. That's incredible to hear a kid, that's young, because you're, how old are you now? 12? 11? 11 years old. 11 going on 30. That's really impressive to hear an 11-year-old be that insightful about what they like about church. I kind of expected I like playing dodgeball and hitting the kids that are half my size, but that was fantastic. So church is a good break for you. You feel safe here, and I love that you feel all those things about church because that's how I feel here as well. So I have to ask you, because you have so many things you like, would you still come to church if mom and dad didn't make you come to church?
Yes, definitely.
Well, you live only a couple blocks away, so you would walk here every day if you could.
Yes, I would.
Awesome. You're only 11. You're going on 30. As you grow older, and there's more opportunities as you grow older to be parts of different things, what kind of different things would you like to be a part of or do in our church?
Instead of being one of the kids in the youth program, I would like to be one of the volunteers in the youth program. I would also like to help run Fusion.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, Violet, I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see God the most in your life?
Probably when Brock and Leslie did pass away. I felt his presence there, and I was grateful for everybody comforting me and being around me and being pretty much my family here.
Got me all emotional over here now. Well, Violet, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm so glad to hear you talk about church that way, that you feel safe here, you feel welcome here, and that you feel like this is a family that can comfort you in dark times. And I hope that as you grow older, the church continues to be that for you, and I hope to watch you grow, be a part of this church, and even take my job, if you so want it, to make sure that our church always does that for others and makes other people feel the same way. So Violet, thank you so much. Give it up for Violet Etheridge, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We are now, because it's a church service, even though it looks a little different, we are going to go into our offering time. We usually don't do a general offering. We usually have a specific cause every month that we do, and this month is all about the Crop Hunger Walk. And what it is a bunch of churches have as many other congregants sign up as they can get to raise money to end world hunger. It's a great event, and the church that raises the most money even wins a thing called the Golden Shoe. So getting that trophy and bringing it here is always, it's wonderful because you know you're doing good, and who just doesn't love winning? It's a great way to say we are the Christiest church in the Cedar Valley. We have done it, and I make that joke every year, I think. And it's never been good, but I'm going to keep making the same joke. So now we'll do our time for offering. We don't do a traditional pass the plate. We have 2 tables on either end of the room by the doors with jars. Take this time as a stretch break, stand up, and make a donation as your heart calls you to do so. Without further ado, this is your time for offering. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our main event, our first speaker of the fall, and man, did we get a good one. This is a story that has a lot of ups and a lot of really down downs. I'm excited for you to hear him speak. Please give it up for Dr. Mark Louvier.
Hey, John. Well, first of all, I wish Violet was still here because I asked her if I could wear her boots. You know, I think I can't. I feel underdressed after seeing Violet's nice boots. John, before we start, I do have a question for you. When you were giving your monologue, you were talking about being 30 and that you thought that that wasn't so old, but you looked out there and you said you looked at some heads and you saw some people losing their hair. I thought you were looking in my direction, but you were looking at Rowan, weren't you? Okay, Rowan. I just wanted to say Rowan was a nice kid, and I just told him that I wanted to mention him when I was here. He made me feel very comfortable, you and your sister Violet. So, I asked Violet if I could wear her boots tonight, but she didn't think they would fit. All right. Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, Mark, I'm super glad to have you on. When we brainstorm these seasons, and we talk about, who do we want to have on the show, who can we get, and Chris brought up your story, and we were all like, we got to have this guy.
And I think I met Chris I've given a talk about being in prison over 10 times, 12 or 15 times since I've been out. And I don't know where I met. Was it Chris at the Rotary or Lions Club? Cedar Falls Lions Club? Okay. And he came up afterwards and asked me if I would talk here, and I thought it would be a great idea.
Yeah, and I'm super glad that you're here. Watching you come in, you're clearly very popular. So
it was very nice. I saw some of my patients that I haven't seen for a long, patients and friends, and it was very nice to see them. So thanks you guys for coming. That was very, very nice. When I've given these talks, I've had an outpouring of support from people that I don't normally see. When I worked at St. Vincent de Paul for a little bit, so a lot of people came there to see me. But I'll save that for a little bit.
yeah, so kind of diving in, all right, as I understand your story, and we're going to let you really break this down. You're a doctor. You're a successful doctor. Some of the people here, you were their doctor.
Delivered their kids. That was
You
a big
were
part of my practice.
very successful. Everybody loved you. Next thing we know, going through a divorce. Things are getting hard at home. We make some new friends, and maybe these new friends aren't very good friends. Next thing we know, we're not a doctor anymore. We're abusing substances and things of that nature. Things as a doctor you would have told other people, hey, do not do this. This is bad for you, but we're going through a dark time. You find yourself in prison.
Right.
Find yourself behind bars. So we go from doctor, top of the world, now we're behind bars. And now we're out of prison, we're rebuilding, and we're here. And so,
Gosh, you just told the whole story. I can
Yeah.
go home, man. That's a great job right there. Very, very succinct.
so talking about, you were a doctor. What were you, family doctor? What was your practice?
I was board certified in family practice with an emphasis on obstetrics and pediatrics. That was sort of my love, was delivering babies and taking care of kids. Although I did take care of the whole gamut from people, from delivery until they died. But my favorite part was OB. So that's when I got to Allen Hospital after doing my residency. There were 3 obstetricians at Allen, and 2 of them died within 6 months of me starting. And so that all of a sudden there was this big OB population that was not being served. There was only one. Dr. Bethke was the only one that was left. And so all of a sudden there was all these moms that needed babies to be delivered. The other thing that happened was that I got involved with the Amish community because I went to Grinnell College and kind of a, earthy kind of background in my history. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. And the Amish don't want a lot of intervention, and I very much feel that people are able to make their own decisions and to choose the kind of health care they want and not to have, some didactic, pedantic physician that tells them what they have to do. And so the Amish started coming to me. Plus, I didn't charge them as much as normal, so I think that was a big part of it, too. So, and of course, with the Amish, you all know that was a huge OB practice. But as you said, I was very successful. I was the #1 admitting physician at Allen Hospital for a number of years. And I had everything going for me. I didn't get married. I had my first child when I was 40. When I went to medical school, I was there for the day on how to deliver babies, but I was sick the day they talked about how to make them. So it did take me a little bit of time. Sorry, some of us are just a little slower. So I had my first child when I was 40, my second one when I was 42, and ended up getting divorced for a number of other reasons. And it was just an overwhelming experience for me because I had waited so long to have children and was successful and had money and all that crap. And so I was able to stay home. Dr. Musgrave and Dr. Matt Smith had come with me. And so I was able to, not have to work so much and was only working pretty much half-time when I was 45 or 47 and still did the deliveries, which is what I wanted to do. And went through this divorce, and all of a sudden I'm seeing my kids instead of being there all the time with them. I was there. You get them on Wednesday afternoons and every other weekend. And that was devastating to me. That was really hard. And I met a young lady, and I had tried, and I don't shy away from these parts. I've given this talk many, many times, and so there's no questions that you can't. I guess we're not doing questions tonight. It's a different format.
Yeah. So I was going to say, you were successful. So do you think the divorce was the turning? Like, when did the wheels really start falling off?
And
when did we go from riding high to?
And I don't want to, it was my decision. I take full responsibility. I don't want to blame it on divorce, but that's what happened. Is that all of a sudden, I had everything in the world. I had an airplane, motorcycles, had everything I wanted. and had these kids that were just a wonderful addition to my life. And when all of a sudden I'm going for a whole week without seeing them, so if you have them on a Wednesday night and it's not your weekend, I don't see my kids for till the following Wednesday. And the rapport with my ex-wife was miserable. I mean, she would not, I had to be there at 7, had to be at 7:01, nothing like that. And so it was just really devastating, and it was just, it was a hard thing for me to handle. Never was a big drinker. I mean, I dabbled in taking some, smoked some pot in college or something, but it was never a big deal. But someone said, try this, it'll make you feel better. And I mean, I knew not to do that, but I tried it once and liked it and just got in over my head. And it was a terrible, terrible thing, and I knew that it was wrong. And the problem was that wasn't so much that I was doing the drugs, but I had met, because of having money and having where I lived in a nice neighborhood, I met some of the guys that were involved in the higher echelons. And there's some things I can't talk about, or people stop and stay and ask questions afterwards. There's certain things I can't talk about because of Mexican cartels and things like that. But I met some guys, and to be nice to them, I stored the methamphetamine at my house. Normally a gram of meth cost $100. It's cheaper now, but it was $100 at the time. And so I had 13 pounds when I got arrested. It was not mine. 13 pounds had a street value of $987,000. So I had almost $1 million worth of methamphetamine in my house, which I know was wrong because I was storing it for these guys. But my choices were, when I got arrested, was to tell where that came from, and if it's not mine, it's somebody else's, and I would have to name names. Well, you learn quickly when you're in jail, or you don't have to go to jail to know this, you just watch TV, but you don't want to name names for Mexican cartel people, because my life I wouldn't last very long. So I took full responsibility for all of that, and I owned guns too, so it was a 50-year sentence for owning that much methamphetamine. I had guns in my house, which was, I didn't use them in the commission of anything. I mean, I was just a hunter, and so you got a double sentence for that. So I got a 100-year sentence, which was a big sentence. Those of you that know me know that when it was in the paper and all that, big thing on the news. When you get a 100-year sentence, there are certain things that you can do with good time and mandatory minimums, et cetera, which I won't go into, but I had to serve a minimum of 10 years. I could have done federal time. The minimum for the federal time would have been probably 18. I might have gotten less than that, but I decided to take the state time. So it was a 10-year minimum sentence that I had to do. I went to Newton Correctional Facility. I was there for 9 years, and then for the last year went to Mount Pleasant, which was considered a minimum facility at that time before I got out. I then went to Waterloo Work Release Center, because if you're in for an extensive period of time, they don't want you to come back out and go straight to home, because when you've been in that long, they think there might be a hard transition for you to make. So I went to the Waterloo Work Release Facility for 3 months and worked at St. Vincent de Paul. I was born and raised a Catholic. Part of my experience in prison was coming back to my faith, which we'll probably talk about at the end. So I'll just say that for now.
Yeah, so
that's essentially what happened.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about, so obviously you made some poor decisions, and now we're in prison, and 10 years. So obviously the last year maybe was a little easier than the first 9, but what was that experience like? Going from having the world at your fingertips to this small little area that's been issued to you for 10 years. What was that experience like?
John, I'd like to tell you that, when they watch TV shows, they don't make TV shows about prison as a nice place. They always show the hardest prisons usually, and the stabbings and the knifings and the fightings and all the fighting and all that. But very fortunately, Iowa only has 9 prisons. They have a prison population total of about 9,000 people. Iowa's not a dangerous place to go. They have enough guard to prisoner ratio so that there's not a lot of violence in Iowa prisons. It's not like Texas, Arizona, and Alaska are the 3 big ones, California too. So there's not a big problem in Iowa prisons. But still, it is an eye-opening experience, especially for someone who had the world at their fingertips and had all the money in the world and all these crazy material things. Fortunately, very soon after I was even in jail, before I went to prison, Pastor Larson, who was a patient of mine, he and Eunice Larson were from Nazareth Lutheran Church. I'm sure a lot of you know who Pastor Larson was, Homer Larson. Would visit me regularly at prison and really brought me into a more personal relationship with Christ. So as a Catholic, a lot of Catholics don't have that kind of personal experience with Christ. It's more ritualistic. So Pastor Larson helped me come to a better realization of my own faith. And so that was a big turning point for me and really helped me get through the rest of prison. One of the things that you can do in prison is that you can do correspondence courses with Bible study groups and with Bible courses. And I probably did over 50 of those in prison, involved in all that stuff. That really, really helped me get through. loneliness and being segregated in prison and having all this spare time. And I'm a real type A guy that's was always on the go and had to, doing deliveries here and staying up all night and seeing 40 people a day in the office. So it's really something to all of a sudden be back in a situation where, there's not much to do all day. I was very, very lucky because a couple things. Because of having some money before I went in, I was able to buy things in prison. Most guys in prison are there not just for their first time. They've done multiple times. Have a high recidivism rate, which means they go back to prison after being in. They get out, they mess with their family, they steal money, they steal things from the house and pawn them. So a lot of times they burn their bridges and their families don't support them. And it's very, you only make on an average of $20 to $30 a month in prison. And the thing, you can buy TVs, you can buy clothes, you can buy food, and hygiene products, and you want to have that. So I was lucky that I had some money and had a very supportive family that was able to help me with that stuff. So I didn't have to endure that. I was able to buy a TV and my own radio and my own clothes and tennis shoes and things like that. The other thing that was nice is that I love to read. I've always been a studious person. And so one of my favorite things to do is reading, and you can get books sent in from Amazon or from the publisher. They have the very nice libraries at prison, but you're able to get books sent in. You can't order them yourself, but your family can do that and send them in for you. And that was very nice. The third thing was that because of my education, I was able to always get a job in prison. There's laundry jobs, there's kitchen jobs, and there's cleaning jobs, which I was willing to do, and I did some of those when I first got to Oakdale. I worked in the kitchen, it was no problem. But once I got to the prisons and they found out who I was able to be a teacher. So every prison has to have a GED program, or they call it HiSET now, but for kids that don't have a high school diploma, kids that drop out. So the federal rule is that if you're under 21, you have to go 3 hours a day in working towards your GED. And if you're over 21, it's highly recommended that you spend an hour and a half, hour to 2 hours a day in school. So I always loved math and science. And so normally you're just, as an inmate, you're only allowed to be a tutor. They have teachers from the local community college, DMAC, or whatever college is nearby the prison. Each of them has their own local community college. And so a tutor's just, the teacher's supposed to teach, and then the tutor's just supposed to go over the lessons with the kids. Well, I was lucky enough to get my own classroom, and so the math teacher would do the basic stuff, because I don't have the most patience in the world, and would do basic fractions, things like that with students. But once they got to algebra, trigonometry, geometry, I was able to have my own classroom and have 6 to 8 students all the time, and was able to teach the whole time that I was in prison. And of course I loved that, because I was able to use my head. And the kids were very, very grateful. So there was over 80 students math is the hardest part of the HiSET or the GED test to pass. You have to do 5 portions of it. Math is the hardest, and that's the one they could not pass. And so I had over 80 students during the time I was in, to be able to get their GED. And that was, a really fulfilling thing for me.
So, obviously as a doctor and you enjoy working with kids, that must have obviously been very helpful for your psyche in getting through being in prison, getting to feel like you have a purpose.
Right.
What do you think that experience would have been like if you really were just in yourself for 9 hours and you weren't treated like a doctor?
John, it would have been very, very hard for me. I was kind of a celebrity because of having that, and because I was a teacher. The other two things were that money is very, very short in prison. As I said, you only make $20 a month, and usually most guys have to pay child support, so they have to give half of that to child support. So they're living on $10 to $12 a month. And the food in prison, I'm sure is not very good. And so you want to buy food from the commissary in prison. So if you make $12 a month, it costs $10.50 to rent a TV for a month. So that only leaves you with a couple bucks if you have to rent a TV. To go to the doctor in prison, there's a $3 copay for every time you go, unless you have a chronic condition. If you have high blood pressure, diabetes, they let you go on a regular basis. But if you get sick, if you get a sore throat or something, you got a rash. So guys had to pay $3 every time they went, and they would take that off their books. And so I was a celebrity because they could come to me. Now, I didn't have a license to practice medicine anymore, but obviously I remembered most of the stuff. I didn't forget it the day I went in prison. And so probably, if I had to estimate, probably 70 to 75% of things that you get, a normal healthy person gets, any kind of medical condition, is self-limiting and gets better on its own. It's caused by a virus. It's not going to be a dangerous thing. So only 20, 25% of the time do you really need to go to the doctor to get a prescription, to get an antibiotic, things like that. So these guys would come to me over and over and say, gosh, doc, look at my rash. Is this, impetigo and I need an antibiotic, or is this just something, a viral exanthem, something that'll go, well, they didn't say viral exanthem, I said that. And,
man, you went to a really educated
you didn't
prison.
Really need to come to me, yeah, geez. Sorry about that. And so, so I saved these guys lots of money. And before long, the prison guards were coming to me because they had $10 and $20 co-pays, to their family doctor when they got home. And so the prison guards were coming to me, and they weren't supposed to. So that was one thing. The other thing is that the first year I was in 2008, there was a 24-year-old Mexican fellow who was playing soccer. And those you might have read about in the paper, he fell out while he was playing soccer. And I was walking back across the yard, and there were 5 guards standing around him. And, we're not supposed to get involved in any situation on the yard where the guards are congregated because there's usually a fight or something. But I knew one of the guards very well. His name was Fresh. So I said, Ron, do you want me to do something with this guy? And he said, yes, Doc, please come help us, because they're all trained in CPR, but none of the guards wants to do mouth-to-mouth or touch an inmate if they don't have to. So I got down, and this guy had no pulse and no respiration. He was essentially dead. But I got to him, it was within 30 seconds of him going down. And so I started doing CPR on him, mouth-to-mouth and CPR. Of course, I got a lot of crap later for kissing a 24-year-old Mexican guy in prison, But saved his life, so it was okay. So I was able to get an IED. An IED is what they use, what blows people up in Afghanistan. AED is the defibrillator. Sometimes I get confused. I've been away from it for 10 years, And shocked him, had to shock him twice, brought him around. He's helicoptered out to Iowa City. He ended up with a pacemaker. He had a medical condition that he was born with that he would have died. And so the inmates and the guards were very, very grateful. The warden, I got some time off my sentence because of saving a person's life. And so that reputation of happening within the first year, nobody ever messed with me in prison. I almost got in one fight, but people were very respectful of me because they knew that I could help them. And so I was very fortunate. But to answer your question, to not have those assets would have made it very, very difficult indeed.
And even with those assets, I'm sure there was still the hard realization of being behind bars. I have to ask you, I'm going to deviate from some of the questions I had originally planned.
You run the show, I heard. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm asking these questions, and I feel like you're almost getting off easy a little bit.
You know what?
It was great. I saved a guy.
I can tell you're a tough cookie, so I'm trying to take charge, so you can't box me in or something.
Yeah. So I want to. So after the divorce, you're only seeing your kids once a week. What is that relationship like now with your kids?
It's not good now. So my wife, normally you get to have your kids come visit you in prison, okay? My wife would have nothing to do with that. She took the kids to a child psychiatrist, child psychologist, but while I was still in jail, to get a determination that it would be in the children's, not their best interest to not see me. So I was not able to see my children while I was in prison. I was able to talk to them once a week, but it was a constant battle. I had 2 separate court cases where they were not answering their phone, would not answer the phone when I called them. And so we had to go through all that, and it was a terrible, miserable experience. Since I've been out, I've been able to see them. One of them I don't see very much. He was the younger of my 2 boys. They're now 22 and 18. They both went to Cedar Falls, Ben and David. And David was younger, so he was 7 years old when I was arrested, so he doesn't remember much about me. Ben was 10 when I went in, and so I have developed, since I've been out, a good relationship with Ben. He's down in Iowa City, and so I'm able to go see him on a regular basis, and that's a good thing. But it was still, the whole reason I got involved in this is because it was a devastating experience for my kids, and I made it even worse,
right,
through my own fault.
So considering the fact that not getting to see your kids sent you down this dark path, what are you doing for yourself right now, knowing things are getting better, but they're not all there? We went 10 years without seeing the kids. What are you doing for yourself to make sure we don't fall into a situation like that again?
Okay. Well, again, I'm very fortunate in that I'm old enough. If I was 20 years old and got out of prison, I wouldn't have been in for 10 years. But a lot of these guys that go to prison when they're 20, they go in for a short period of time. They go in for 4 months, 6 months, a year, and they get right back out. They get back into the same group that they were in with before, and they don't have a lot of options. They don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of support, and so they start doing drugs again. Plus getting out, you guys have read all about Ban the Box in the paper, and it's hard to get a job when you get out of prison, especially for a 20-year-old that has no skills. So, if you have an option of going to McDonald's and making $350 a week, or going back and selling drugs and making $1,000 a week, because it's amazing how much money you can make selling drugs.
Not that we want you to
get
excited about
don't anybody do that.
You can make how much? No, nothing. You make $0.
And so it's easy for those guys to get back into it. But I'm fortunate because I'm now 62 years old. I have no desire. I really was not, had a big desire at first. It was my fault for getting into it in the first place, but I knew better, and I really know better now. So I went to my parole officer today. I go once a month to see my parole officer. I get drug tested randomly. And I've always passed my drug tests. I was never a big drinker, so it's really not a problem for me. So I really don't, I'm very happy now to stay away from that lifestyle. I don't really hang around with anybody I knew. When I was at St. Vincent de Paul, I met a lot of people that would either employees or people that were coming in because it's a store for people with low incomes that come in. And so I've still had a lot of contact with people that I know are doing meth and have been with them, as they're doing meth, and know that they're actively doing it. And I really try to work with them. Since I've been out, I've been a mentor for one of the guys that was one of my cellies at Mount Pleasant. He's down in Quad Cities and just finished a 6-month program at the Salvation Army. He got back into drugs and almost died, was resuscitated with Narcan, and so the judge, instead of sending him back to prison, had him go to the Salvation Army for a 6-month program, and I've been his mentor and gone down on a regular basis. He just graduated. There's a young lady right now who is in jail here, who I visit on a regular basis, who did meth that I met since I've been out, and I've been working with her and supporting her. She now got transferred to a residence in Fort Dodge, an aftercare program. There's a woman who tried to kill herself after doing meth since I've been out, was one of my colleagues at St. Vincent, and she's now at a residential facility in Fayette. So I'm working with people to try to keep them off drugs and show them that there's a better way to do that. Plus giving speeches, as I've given all these talks, across the state of Iowa. That's very fulfilling to me. To hopefully someone will listen out there, young kids will pay attention and not get involved in that. Nancy Reagan had the big mantra about just say no, and it seems so simplistic at first, but it really is true. If you just get into a situation, you just have to walk away from it and not get involved in it, and that's really the best way to do it. Once you do this stuff, different people have different drugs. It's alcohol for some people, opiates for other people. I mean, I can't hardly take a pain pill, because it constipates me. So I don't like opiates. And I mean, drinking, I don't like the way you feel sick. It just happened that meth was something that I sort of have a little ADD probably. And back when I was a kid in the 60s, they didn't have Ritalin, I don't think, or we didn't do it. I probably would have been a Ritalin kid because I'm very type A and very motivated and very driven. And so meth was stimulant drugs have a paradoxical effect on people that are a little hyperactive. It makes them calm. So that was a drug that I knew about it, but I just never tried it. And once I tried it, I liked it. So I just make a point to stay away from that, to stay very active. I ride my bicycle all the time, ride motorcycles, I travel. My parole officer allows me to travel on a regular basis. And I just read all the time and love giving talks. And so when Chris asked me to do this, I just jumped on it.
Well, awesome.
And I heard you were here, so I heard about this new hot show we had going on.
Yeah. So we'll close out with a two-part question for you. One is a nice short answer, and the other is kind of the heart, kind of what we're getting at the series. So your two-parter is, what is your job now? Because obviously you can't go back and be a doctor. So what are you doing now? And then how has God been working in your life as you've been working on rebuilding your life, your friendships, people that I'm sure wanted to get far away from you, that felt betrayed, how is God helping you through that?
First of all, you should know by now that I probably can't give a short answer to anything. You said,
what
am I doing
That's why
now?
I gave you two questions at once, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to cut in.
The short answer is, what am I doing now? So I came out and worked for St. Vincent de Paul, and I did that for a year and a half. They had some issues with the executive director and the boss, and so I decided to leave. They fired him. They asked me to run St. Vincent de Paul, but I didn't want to do it on a full-time basis. So I'm, quote, retired now. I would have been able to get my medical license back, and I can, but I would have to do a 2-year residency because I was away for 10 years. There are certain things that you don't forget. I was talking to one of my patients here, delivering a kid. I mean, that's pretty basic. That doesn't change. Even though I was away for 10 years, there might be a couple new drugs. There really aren't. But, with hypertension and diabetes, there would be new drugs that I would have to learn. So when I came out when I was 60 when I got out of prison, so I would have been 62, or if I did it now, I'd be 64 if I'd spent 2 years. I really didn't want to go back and do that. I don't really have to, so I thought I would just be retired. I did go out to, just because of being in the winter and bored, I went out to Hawkeye Tech and took the truck driving course. So I got my CDLA license at Hawkeye, and so I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to do that just on a temporary basis or a part-time basis, because it seems really, I always rode motorcycles, flew airplanes, never drove a semi, but it's one of the coolest things in the world. To parallel park a semi is really neat. But right now, as of today, I'm retired and I don't have a job right now. What my relationship with God has changed immensely. I talked a little bit about Homer Larson, my sort of conversion experience, but having that faith in prison, and you always hear these prison conversion stories of guys that find Jesus and find God, and then of course they get out and they go back. That won't happen to me. I mean, mine quote, took. To have that personal relationship with Jesus Christ in prison, especially when you have the time, to pray, when you it really teach it, you really learn to pray and to have that quiet time every night. You know, you're by yourself all the time. You're never by yourself in prison, unless you're in solitary confinement. But you know, you have a lot of quiet time, and a lot of time to reflect on your past life and on what your present life is now and what your future life will be. And so I used that time to make sure that my future life was going to be one that was very close to God. Having seven brothers and sisters, we were always very close, and my dad deceased before I went to prison. My mother's 86, and I'm very close to her. I'm allowed to leave, from a parole standpoint, I'm allowed to leave 1 week a month, 7 to 10 days a month, and I do that. I go back to see my family. Most of them are in Indiana. I just saw my parole officer today and got approval to go next Thursday for 11 days, stay with my sister, do some landscaping work, have my mom's coming down there, my sister, one from Florida, is coming up, and we will all be together as a family, and we've done that probably 4 times a year since I've been out. And they're all very religious too, and so it's really a good group experience when I get together with my family. It's been a great time. Giving these talks has been fulfilling. It's just been I've been very, very happy since I've been out.
Well, awesome, Mark. Well, I'm glad we get to have you on the show tonight to talk about your journey, what you've been through, because the thing I like the most about doing this series, and as we talk about God and as we look through countless examples in the Bible, is it does not matter what you've done or where you've been. It is never too late to start that relationship with Christ, to receive that love from Christ, and to start on a new path, to move forward in a way that brings honor to Christ's name and that makes the world a better place. And I'm thankful that you have had that transformation, that despite where you've been, you've come out on the other side. And even more so encouraging that is to hear you talk about trying to help others in similar or worse positions. Obviously, not everybody gets to go into prison as a doctor and maybe have that help them out. Some people go into prison with nothing and they risk leaving with nothing. And to hear that you understand, hey, I got out and I'm okay, I'm on a better path, that you're reaching back, not only shows how much you've changed, but it shows how much God has changed you and turned your eyes towards
Let me
your
add
brothers
one
and
thing, John,
sisters.
to the audience. If any of you, and again, I talked to some of my patients that were here who have an experience with someone that they know and love in prison. If any of you know anybody in jail or prison, the number one thing that I have to point out that kept me going or that was so important to me was having visits. It's amazing, when you're torn away from your family and from the rest of society, and you're put in this place, this little microcosm that's crazy out there that is like its own little world, to have people from the outside come and visit you. Even if it's through the glass in jail, where you have to talk on the phone. In most prisons, you still have contact visits where you can go into a room and sit and hug and play cards and buy some candy from a machine. Do that. If you know anybody that's not, even if they're not that good of a friend, if they're a friend of the family, offer to go visit them, and they will love you. It's an amazing, amazing experience. Write letters to them. We have every state and federal prison pretty much has email now, and so you can email. But go to visit people in prison. One of the things that Jesus talked about was visit. Take care of the poor, take care of the needy. Visit the, take care of the sick. Visit those in prison. It made a huge difference in my life, and every one of those guys loves to have those visits. They talk about it starting about Wednesday, because the visits are on the weekend. They start talking about who's coming to visit them, to their cellies. And then when the day comes, everybody's all excited. Everybody the guy shaves. They brush their teeth. They take a shower, which they don't always do all the time, and get all ready for that visit. And then there's a big denouement after that, until the following week. So really, if I could impress that upon you guys, it's been a pleasure to be here and to share my testimony. It's
been a pleasure to have you, Mark. And with that does conclude our service. So I want to give a round of applause to our guest, Mark Louviere.
Great. I don't have to sing or dance or anything, right? No.
No,
okay.
no,
I don't know if he's
not
going
at
to play
all.
a song. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, I want to thank Mark. I want to thank Violet for being on the show. And I hope his message was one that was moving for you as it was for me. And I hope as we go forth from this place, we can learn something from Mark and what he's been through in ways that we can reach out to others. So if you...
And I'll stay around and talk if anybody wants to ask me anything.
Absolutely. So if you want to visit with Mark afterwards, he will be here as long as you want him to be here. As you probably could tell, he has no problem talking. So he is not gonna run out of breath. He's not gonna run out of wind. He's gonna go all night if you let him. So as you leave Fusion, we hope that you felt God's presence as you join us tonight. If you've never been, we hope you got something from Mark. I hope as you leave here, you think about people that have been in Mark's position, or maybe you feel like you're in a somewhat position like that where you feel like you're at rock bottom, you feel like hope is gone, and I hope that you know God is going to help pick you up. Lean on God and lean on your fellow brothers and sisters as Mark did and as Mark is encouraging you to do. And as I tell everybody that leaves, please, please, please be Christ for one another. Have a good night. Thanks.